Everybody can see my screen? Thumbs up for yes. Cool, okay. So hi everyone. Thanks for taking the time to join today's webinar. My plan for today is to present a few slides outlining some of the tools you can use in asset management and then give you a demo on how they can work. The tools we'll be discussing today are QGIS, OpenStreetMap, and some AIMNet Excel tools. The best thing about these tools is that they are free and open source. There's no annual subscription fee, no one-time purchase fee. They are absolutely free. They also come with some great documentation and guides on how to use the tools. So as Justin said, my name is Ayla. I've been with Track Consulting for about 5 years and have been using these tools for just about the same amount of time. And just wanted to let you know that I myself am always learning how to be more efficient and do better work. So we're all on this learning journey together. Just want to say thanks to MNL and FCM for helping put together this project and providing funding. Without them, we wouldn't be here. And then to jump into the slides today. So I'll be looking at what GIS is first. Does anybody know what GIS is? Has anybody done any work with GIS in the past besides Andre and Justin? I'm going to take that silence as a no. Cool, okay. So for those of us who aren't really familiar what GIS is, it stands for Geographic Information Systems, and it allows a user to represent real-life features in a 2D or 3D model using a spatial reference system like coordinates to assign a location in digital space. So using coordinates, it can take any feature on the Earth and display it in a digital format so it can undergo analysis. Many people use GIS without even knowing it. If you have a GPS or rely on Google directions to get you from point A to point B, you are using GIS. GIS uses 2 formats to represent the world, a raster format and a vector format. Rasters are images where each pixel in the image represents a feature on the Earth. Typically, they're actual images taken from satellites or airplanes or drones. Vectors rely on pairs of coordinates to represent the Earth, and they are categorized into a point, which would be a single pair of coordinates, lines, which would be a series of coordinates where the start and end points are different, and polygons, again, a series of coordinates, but this time the starting and end coordinate would be the same. So these coordinates would be used to mark the location or a boundary of a feature on Earth. And you can kind of see here in this little graph, let me just get this laser pointer on the go. So this bottom image represents the real world. When you go up a level, it's demonstrating the raster model. So each feature on the Earth is represented by a pixel. And it just comes together to make almost like a blanket layer. And then the top layer here looks at the world through a vector model. So the different land types have clear boundaries indicated. The river is being represented by a line, and everything else looks like it's being represented by a polygon. So why would you want to use GIS with regards to asset management? It's a great way to record and display what and where you have. And you can also use it to capture background information on your assets, such as material, diameter, age, value, all that sort of great stuff. So the first tool we'll be looking at is QGIS. QGIS, as mentioned before, is a free and open source software. You can download it directly from their website, qgis.org. Its name stands for Quantum Geographic Information System. The open source means that anyone can help enhance and modify the program. All enhancements are approved by a team and then released in an updated version of the software. Sometimes the only downfall when it comes to open source options is they typically do not come with great on-call tech support. So if you do have questions on how to use the software or tools, you'd have to avail of the documentation and guides already created, or you can consult good old Google, which is what I do a lot of the time. QGIS has created amazing step-by-step guides and tutorials on how you can use some of the built-in tools, and you can find that information on the documentation page on their website. This software is a fully functional and complex GIS system that is compatible with many different data types and comes with a large built-in toolbox, as well as options to install additional tools called plugins. You can think of the toolbox and these plugins like apps you would download on your phone or your tablet. They allow you to manipulate the data, such as editing, adding in new information, querying, displaying specific backgrounds, etc. So when you go to the Download QGIS webpage, there is a list of options you can download. They do specify differences for Windows and Mac. I've always worked in a Windows. If you are using a Mac and need some help trying to install it, let me know and I can try and help you work through it. But for everybody else using Windows, I do recommend downloading the standalone installer version. So that's the long-term release one. This version just tends to be more stable. A lot of the bugs have been fixed. If you want to try a more experimental version, you can download the latest release. And then once you have your software installed on your computer and you get your project set up, you can anticipate your window to look similar to this. So on the left-hand side, there's typically one or two panels. They would be the browser and layers panel. On the top, you would find the toolbars where tools are located. You can access them by clicking on their icons or finding them in the drop-down menus. And the main portion of the project would be the map screen. So that's this whole area here you can see. In this image, we're looking at our layers panel that has two layers with visibility toggled on, and you can see them being displayed in the map screen. So if nobody has any questions right now, I would like to just jump into a live demo.
Ayla, we did have one question from Lisa.
Oh, sure, sorry, Lisa.
Oh, and I think Andre is about to answer it. So she was asking, is the software compatible with Google Earth?
Yes. Yep, so you can use Google Earth as what's called a base map. So it would be like a background image on your project, and then you can see your infrastructure laid on top of it. And then I can show you that in just a second. So I have a demo project created here. You can see my layers panel here, where I can find any layers that's going to be saved to my project. And like the image I just showed you, it's got my water points and water lines toggled on. So that means I can see them in my map screen. To toggle a layer on and off, or even specific features within a layer, all you have to do is click the empty checkbox next to a layer's or group's name. So you can see when I've clicked all my checkboxes, everything in the map gets turned on and it becomes quite cluttered. So toggling visibility for specific layers or specific groups can help keep your map screen really clean. And yes, you can import and export files. So I have preloaded all these layers in, and they're being read from a space saved on my computer. I don't know if this desktop version has compatibility with syncing up to like a cloud option, but I know you can access remote databases through different plugins. So toggling visibility on and off, again, will help keep your map screen clean. So I've just, again, turned off different groups and layers. Within my water points and lines, I can turn off specific features. So I've just turned off my water mains. just turned off the transmission means, so now I'm only looking at the points. And you can keep turning things off and on so you can really fine tune what you'd like to be looking at. You can indicate the difference between a layer and a group between the text that's in the name. So I don't know if the text is big enough on your screen to see this, but the PWS PT and the PWS LN text is more bold, it's a heavier, more solid text when you compare it to like PPW or infrastructure. Everybody okay with that? Yep, Lisa, you don't have to have coordinates. When you're adding in new features, you can just kind of draw them in by clicking on the map screen. If you do have a table containing coordinates, you can add that in as a CSV, and the software has capabilities of mapping out those coordinates. You're welcome. So with that kind of question Lisa just posted, we can go into editing data, which is kind of what most people want to be doing when they're working within QGIS. So sticking with our points and lines layers, first things first, when you want to make a change to your data in QGIS, you need to turn editing mode on. It's a bit of a fail-safe that the software has been created with, so you don't accidentally make a change or delete something you don't mean to. So to turn editing on for the two layers I'm going to be working in, I first select them in my layers panel. You can see it's got a blue box around the layer name. And then in my toolbar, there's an icon that looks like a yellow pencil. It's called toggle editing. Can you guys see those icons okay? I can make them a little bit bigger if you'd like. Bigger? Okay. Let me just make them a little bit bigger. There. That might be a little bit easier. Okay, so I'm going to do the same steps for my water lines. Select the layer in my layers panel. It's got the blue box around it. Click on my yellow pencil to turn editing mode on. So I've told the software that I want to work within these two layers. To add a new feature, you can use the add feature tool. So for a point layer, it looks like 3 little dots. For a line layer, it looks like a green V. They both have this kind of yellow box in the bottom. So to add in a new point feature for water points, this could be like gate valves, curb stops, fire hydrants, things that take up a small unit of space. And then to add a new feature, you can simply click anywhere in the map screen. Right now, we're looking at a fairly zoomed away extent. You can use the scroller on your mouse to zoom in if you'd like. There's also a plus and minus magnifying glass that can zoom in and out as well. So let's just pick an example. Say this demo added in a new point feature right there. So I just simply clicked on the map screen. And then this box will pop up for you to fill out information on some predefined attribute columns. So if you were thinking about this data layer in like an Excel sheet, all of these items here on the left would be like column headers. And then all this information is stuff you can save that would be specific to the feature you're creating. So you can specify from a list different types of features, so hydrants, gate valves. If you've got the coordinates, you can certainly add them in here, although adding them in here won't necessarily change their placement on the map screen. We can look at that example in a second. Some of the basic attributes we like to save with asset management would be a condition value, the year that that asset was put in service, any known materials, lengths, quantities, anything that can help describe that asset you're adding. You can create an attribute for. And when you're happy with the information you've saved, you can press OK, and you can see the new feature has been added to the map. Yep, Lisa, so right now we're working off of AIMNet's templates. Are you guys familiar with AIMNet, Atlantic Infrastructure Management? Those templates are available through AIMNet. We can also send you blank copies as well. To add in a new line item, it's very similar to adding in a point. So make sure your add feature icon is selected and then simply click anywhere on the map screen where you want that feature to be. The only difference for a line and a polygon versus a point is for a line and polygon, you need to click everywhere on the screen where that feature takes a turn. So for pipes, if they have like a 45 bend or a T, or if you're adding in a road, like you can trace the shape of the road or a trail. And when you're happy with the placement of your line feature, you can right click on your mouse to finish. And again, the very similar window pops up where you can save information that'll be specific to that asset. So let's just say it's a ductile iron pipe. Let's put in a 1960, and it's 200 millimeter diameter. And then you just press OK. And this one didn't show up on my screen because if you come back to my layers panel, you can see I've got my distribution mains toggled off. So I'm just going to put that on there, and you can see now it's being displayed on my map. So that's how you would add in new features. That's a great thing to do if your town has development, it's putting in new services. Sometimes you don't need to add in new features. You can just update information on existing features. For example, say in this municipality on this street, the town wanted to use the same trench for this water pipe. So the location of the pipe is accurate, but they want to update the information that's saved to that pipe. So again, like when you're adding a layer or adding a feature, make sure you select the layer you want to make the changes to on your layers panel. And now we're going to use our select features tool. So this tells the program what feature you're going to want to make changes to. This icon looks like a little yellow post-it note with a mouse cursor. And then in the map screen, you click the feature that you want to make changes to. So you can see I've clicked this water main and it's now yellow. So that's the layer I've selected. I can make changes to that feature. Next, I want to bring up the attribute window for that feature because that's where the information is stored. So I can click on the modify attributes icon. It looks like an orange pencil with 3 yellow bars. And when you click on that, you can see the attribute window looks very similar to when you're adding in a new feature. So here you can override the existing information. If it's a brand new pipe, you can upgrade the condition so it represents a better value. You can change the material, you can change the install year. If the diameter is changed, if the length is changed by a couple of meters, you can change all that in here. And then simply press OK when you're happy with those changes. Any questions so far? Everything looks okay? Thumbs up. Lisa's asking setup for base map with application of each town. Typically, if you'd like Track to do that, that would be included in the asset management project. We can certainly help you set up your own project if you'd like to do it on your own. You know, we can schedule a 1 or 2 hour session where we can help you set up QGIS on your computer. What else? What else? What else? Okay, so this next little tip is a little bit more advanced. It's for if you need to change the location of a point feature, if you've got specific coordinates. So this is great. Right now I've eyeballed in all of the placements of my features, but say I've got some coordinate values for this gate valve, and I want to make sure my map is fairly accurate. So I want to update those coordinates. On my layers panel, I'm going to make sure my water points are selected because that's the layer I want to be working with. And then I want to use my vertex tool. So this tool allows you to change the placement of an existing feature. So I'm going to click on it, and then I'm just going to zoom in a little bit so I can make sure I'm working with the right valve. And you can kind of see when I hover over the gate valve here, it's got like a little bit of a red bullseye underneath it. When I hover over water lines, you can see it kind of has this red halo. So it's just giving you an indication of the features you can select that are currently underneath your cursor. So I want to change this gate valve. I've hovered my mouse over it. It's red, so I know my mouse is going to be able to select it. And then I right click on that feature to bring up the saved coordinates for it. Then I can simply double click on the X or Y values to override the information here. So just for this example, let's make it pretty extreme. Go 50 and a 75. So that feature has now moved to those specific coordinates. I think that's most of the basics of what you'd be looking to do to start capturing all your assets in GIS. Does anybody have any questions right now relating to capturing assets in GIS? I'm looking to you, Lisa. So how do you capture hard copy data into the map database? For most of the towns that we've done work for, they're pretty much starting from scratch. They don't have any existing GIS information. So we work a lot with paper as-built or PDF as-built, and essentially just eyeball them in based off of this satellite imagery. So the accuracy may not be 100%, but at least it gets the registrar going. It starts to tally up how much they have. And Tract, we can do this with Tract. Again, it's something we typically do when you've hired us to do the full project. If it's something that you'd like to do as your own self, as your town, we do also offer training courses where we can come in for a day and kind of help you walk through step by step on how to start capturing your own data. Does that answer your question, Lisa? Sweet, love it. Anybody else have any questions, comments they'd like to chat about for QGIS? I think we're okay. Okay. So back in our presentation, I am going to minimize the chat now, Justin, just to get back into the presentation. So if anybody else types something, just jump in and let me know.
Yeah, I can't see the presentation. I don't know if you've brought it up.
Nope, I haven't started it yet.
Okay, no worries.
So there we go. You can see the presentation now?
Yeah.
Okay. So that was QGIS we just looked at. The next one I'd like to talk about is a website called openstreetmap.org. This website is another great open source and free tool that allows a town to ensure their road names and buildings are accurate. And it also has capabilities of adding in lines for your water and sewer. So in order to make those changes with the maps, you would need to create an account. And this information tends to be public. Andre, correct me if I'm wrong, but you want to make sure that anything you save to OpenStreetMap is public knowledge and isn't sensitive information.
That's correct, yeah.
Sweet. Also, anything you add in on OSM, there's a plug-in with QGIS that allows you to import that data from the website into your QGIS project. So if you've spent a lot of time making sure your road names are correct, putting in buildings, you can import all that data into your QGIS project, which is a nice function. I just want to show you a couple screenshots of what the web page will look like before I get into a little bit of a demo. So when you sign in on the website, your screen should look very similar to this. There's a search bar where you can adjust the screen to go to a specific point or area. And then there's also navigation and some base map options available on the right-hand side. When you do turn on your editing mode within OSM, the screen will look pretty similar to this. So it looks pretty busy. I don't want the pen, I want the laser pointer. So all in this map screen, there's a bunch of pre-drawn features. You can hover over them to adjust them, change any background information on them, move them around. And the tool has capabilities of adding in points. So they could represent like manholes, fire hydrants, pole lines, line items as well. So you could use those to capture trails or roads. If you want to do any rivers or streams, you can use a line as well. And you can also add in areas. So they would represent like municipal boundaries, buildings, if you want to designate a wetland or a forested area. I believe you can also distinguish between like residential areas, business areas. So it can be a pretty complex website. So with that in mind, let's just end the show and get into a bit of a demo. So I've signed in, I have my account, and I just adjusted my screen to my neighborhood, because I think my neighborhood is awesome. You can move the map around and see a bunch of pre-drawn in features. So there's roads, some pole lines, some streams. There's a little pointer for a post office and a church. So it's pretty cool. You can add in a lot of information. And then when you turn your editing mode on, oh, I can discard those changes. So you can see here now I can hover over my mouse on all these features. They get the same kind of red glow. So if I do select them, I can make changes to them. I do want to note that if you start off super zoomed out, you won't be able to add, draw, or edit anything. You need to be zoomed in to a certain distance in order to be able to add in new features. There's not a lot here that I can add. It's already pretty busy. But just a couple of little examples. If I wanted to add a point, I would just specify a point in my add feature toolbar, and then click on the map screen to add a point. And then there's a whole bunch of saved tags that you can link this feature to. And that's how OSM knows what type of data it is. For lines, very similar to QGIS, you can click anywhere in the map screen where you'd like a bend in that line item to be, and then double click to finish. And again, you can specify what type of feature it is. You can give it some attributes like a name, if it's got a specific surface, like if it's unpaved or gravel. Lots of other attributes you can add, and there's always options to add in additional information. When you've added the information like you'd like to do, all you would have to do is press the save button, and it gives you an option of asking the website if you'd like your data to be peer reviewed prior to publishing, or if you just want to go ahead and publish it. We do this a lot with clients who have rural municipalities and typically Google Maps doesn't have accurate road names for, so we can go into OSM and update road names. Sometimes Google Maps has old roads that are no longer used as current roads, so we can go in and delete old roads. Likewise, if a town has had a lot of development within the past couple of years and Google hasn't caught up to that development, we can add in new lines to represent the roads. Any questions with OSM? I think we're good. Okay. So back to the presentation. Oh, one more thing I do want to say about OSM. Updating your road names and adding in municipal buildings is great for visitors to your town. It really helps them be able to navigate around your town. It's also really beneficial for emergency services. I can't tell you how many times I've heard people say that the ambulance has gone to the wrong address. So by spending a little bit of time on making sure your road names are accurate, you can really help emergency services. Okay, so the next group of tools we have in our asset management toolbox are some Excel tools. These ones have been developed by AIMNet with a lot of partnerships and help. And again, these are a series of open source tools that can help you with asset management. They are free to use. AIMNet just asks you email them directly for a copy of the latest version. They've opted for this process because they find it easier to make sure new users are getting the help they need to set up the tools. You can access or contact them through their website, aimnetwork.ca/contact. They are also working on developing a series of demonstration videos to help users with setting up and editing their asset management data. So I'm really looking forward to those videos. The first tool I'd like to talk about is the Fleet and Facility tool. As the name suggests, the tool works on capturing information on facilities and fleet. You can also use this tool to capture equipment. It was created to help calculate a replacement value, condition, and consequence of failure for your facilities, fleet, and equipment. The tool is designed to assign a new tab for each facility. When it comes to adding your equipment and vehicles, it's up to yourself how you'd like to record those. I personally like to add in a tab per vehicle department. So for my firefighting vehicles, they'll have one tab. Public Works vehicles will have another tab, and same thing with the equipment. If you do a tab per vehicle or piece of equipment, your Excel tool will have a lot of tabs, I think. So again, starting from scratch, it's great to focus on large ticket items first, just to try and capture really critical infrastructure. So focus on your big buildings, things that are critical to the daily running of your town. Same thing with your fleet. And then as you have more and more time to refine this, you can work on capturing smaller items. To use the tool, there's a couple buttons you can click to add a new facility or fleet. So as you can see in this image here, the button add facility, add fleet, they would just add in a new tab on your Excel sheet down here. And then once you've finished compiling your facilities, you can click this compile button. And it just takes every line item for your facilities and your vehicles and lists them out on this database tab. The next tool, I'm just going to go through the tools, give you an overview, of what they are, and then we'll work on some demos. So this is the same tool, but it's just a screenshot of what you can see for a facility page. So this tool was designed to break down a building into standardized components, such as foundations, exterior closures, plumbing, typical categories that a lot of buildings have. Within these categories, there are line items that you can fill out information for. The replacement value comes from filling out the quantity column, which is which is mostly the square footage of the building. To figure out what type of measurement the quantity column is looking for, there's a column right next to it, and it gives you an acronym for square footage or cubic feet. The other two columns that are really important to fill out for this fleet and facility tool are the condition and consequence of failure columns. So it's a little hard to see, but that's those guys right there. AIMNet works on a 1 to 5 scale for both condition and consequence of failure, and you can see what the numbers correlate to here. Typically, the newer a building or recently renovated, you would want to give it like a 1 to a 2, maybe a 3, depending on the renovation. And then the older the building, or if it hasn't had any maintenance since it was built and is already starting to show signs of failure, you could assign it a 3 or a 5, a 4 or a 5. Consequence of failure, so minor consequence could be something that the town probably wouldn't even notice in its day-to-day operations, really no impact to the town if it fails, up to a catastrophic. So that could be something like loss of life, major environmental damage, major lawsuit. So consequence of failure is something that your town should get together as a group and define for yourselves. Everybody's consequence values are different. So you just need to find something that works good for you guys. The next tool that I'll show will be the capital inventory tool. This tool is designed to compile all of your data from the GIS project and the fleet and facilities tool. And it performs calculations on the data to predict risk, end of life, replacement costs. It does a lot of calculations. The user can operate the tool from this dashboard tab. There are a bunch of buttons that allow the user to jump to different pages in the Excel sheet, to edit the inventory, to import data, to run calculations and export information. I just want to kind of run through some of these tabs down here before we move on to the next tool. So as I mentioned, this is the dashboard tab. When you click on these buttons, it can help you move around the table or help you run calculations. This tool under the user guide tab provides information on what the tool is, how you can use it, and why you'd like to use it. The inventory tab just has a huge list of all of your assets that you've captured in GIS and fleet and facilities. This background tab, this one's kind of like the brains of the tool. So it has a series of tables and charts that have a lot of important calculations, or they break down the acronyms that we use to describe assets and feature codes. So this background tab is pretty important to the functionality of the tool. If at all possible, try not to override some of the information. You don't want to accidentally mess up any of the calculations there. The next couple tabs are just a bunch of different reports that the tool will populate. This PSOR tab stands for Preliminary State of Infrastructure Report, and it looks at your data almost in a snapshot of time. So it'll tally up how much you have, what it's worth, when you can anticipate end of life, and the overall condition of those assets. The RSOR stands for risk-based infrastructure, and it just looks at the same data, but through a risk lens. Can you access these tools from the GIS map? So both of these tools are kind of standalone. You'd have to import your data from GIS into this tool. If you want to use the tool without GIS, you can just add in each asset as a separate line item within the inventory tab. You are welcome. The pro forma budget tab down here. Get my laser pointer back. When you're working through your data and you'd like to identify projects for an upcoming planning period, you can type in project names and years and they'll show up under this pro forma budget tab. And then the last one is open source and contributors. So this one just acknowledges all the people that have put a lot of time and effort into building this tool and provides you some information on the licensing of the tool. And then the last one I want to talk about before I get back into the demos is the level of service assessment tool. So this tool aims to distinguish any performance or sustainability gaps with regards to the service a town provides. And it can use this information, and this information can be used when communicating to various audiences, such as new counselors, new staff members. It can even be beneficial when you're talking to your residences. So similar to all the other tools, it comes with a couple tabs to help you navigate the tool. The introduction tab gives you information on how and why you'd like to use the tool. The services and assets tab allows you to list all the services your town provides and any associated assets that go towards that service. Describing levels of service. So this tab looks at various measures of that service to help the users of the tool identify any performance or sustainability gaps. And it also provides you a space to identify any preferred methods for addressing those gaps. This is also a great spot to record decisions regarding major infrastructure development plans or goals. And then lastly, this reporting out tab will take any performance or sustainability gaps identified and just show them in a concise list. So let's look at some demonstrations of these tools. So the first one, fleet and facility. My main tab, I've got my buttons to add in a new building or a new group of fleet. I have one created down here called municipal offices. So when you get your tool, this is what it'll look like. And I'm just going to zoom in a little bit so you can see some of the text. Let's see. It's hard to fit the tool all on one page. So the tool assigns a name to your building. Right now, the tool doesn't know which asset group that building belongs to and what type of asset it is. So you would need to use the drop-down menus here to specify what asset group it belongs to. So your municipal office would be a part of your facilities. And you could assign it the type of municipal office. And then you would just scroll through the different components and populate the quantity column with the square footage of your building that has that specific component. So not every building is going to have every component we have here. For example, I know a lot of the clients that I've worked with, a lot of their buildings don't have any HVAC systems. A lot of them also don't have these types of fire protection. So for anything that your building has that doesn't quite fit into these categories, you can just list them out down here. You can provide a name for them, you can describe them, and then give them a replacement cost, life expectancy, and then a condition and consequence of failure. So this tool will use the information in this quantity column times by the rate column to give a replacement cost. Right now, it's a pretty high level value per building. If you did want to go in and override all of these rate values, you can just type in the rates that kind of reflect the conditions for your town. Likewise, the expectancies, these are just kind of based off of industry standards. If you know your town has buildings with different life expectancies, you can override this value as well. Just to go through an example of adding in a new tab, let's add in some fleet data for, say, a fire department. So right now I'm just giving my new tab a name, fire department vehicles, and I'm going to press add.
Ayla,
Yep.
what about for changing the different types of your foundation or your walls? Like, let's say you have a lot of trim on your building. Like, how would you change the different cost or the different rate of that item?
Sure thing. So the tool comes with a couple ways that you can manipulate that data. They have designed it so that you can change the type. So they have a difference between minimal, standard, and extensive. So again, if you don't know the replacement costs for individual components of your building, you can break them up a little bit this way. So some examples of maybe extensive items could be foundations for a public works garage or some slab on grade for a fire hall, things that typically have maybe more structured reinforced foundation to hold up all that heavy equipment. Likewise, hockey arenas tend to have some pretty extensive exterior walls. So for your arenas, you could specify extensive. And then when you do that, it just updates this rate value. So it's a nice way to maybe change your rates if you don't really have a dollar value. Likewise, some buildings are just shells and structures, and they're not really standard or extensive. So you could downgrade those replacement values by opting to go with a minimal route. So things like storage sheds, maybe basic garages that don't really have any plumbing or electrical components, pretty minimal stuff, you know? Does that answer your question, Justin?
Yep, that's perfect.
Cool. And yeah, so if you do have a per dollar value, you don't have to worry about the type. You can just type in that rate over the existing data. So adding in some vehicles, again, all you would need to do is just list out your vehicles. So each vehicle would have its own row in the list. You could provide information on its name, under the description if you wanted to include like its VIN number or when it was last serviced, if you have any known issues with it. You can record lots of information under the description area. And then just work through the row. So put in its replacement value or its purchase value, what you think its expected life is. I know some municipalities opt for a 10-year life expectancy. So every 10 years they get brand new vehicles. So you would just type in 10 for there. If your municipality is someone that likes to try and get more life out of their vehicles and you want to aim for 15, you can just type in 15. So whatever sort of life expectancy you would think you'd get from your vehicles. Annual maintenance cost, if you know how much those vehicles are contributing to your annual maintenance budget, you can certainly put that in. If it's really unknown, you can just leave it as a 0 or blank. And then again, the important ones, condition and consequence of failure. Any questions on the fleet and facility tool? I think we're okay.
Ayla, I guess a comment should, for getting those equipment values, I guess you would use insurance values maybe, or, you know, a list of, you know, from your auditor to get those, all the equipment and the different types of that, the fleet.
Yep, you can certainly use any information from your insurance rolls or your accounting books. If you don't have the receipt of purchase for your vehicle, Although sometimes, especially in today's world where things are so expensive, something you may have bought 5 years ago is probably going to be more expensive than what you've bought or than what you would buy nowadays. But just to get you started, you can use your insurance rolls or your accounting information. Sometimes you can also just do kind of a basic Google search to see what similar pieces of equipment or vehicles are being sold for. Does that answer your question, Justin?
Yes.
Cool. So I'm gonna go on to the AIM Capital Inventory tool. And I will let you guys know every single time I do a live demo of this, I get some weird glitch or bug. So please bear with me if it freezes or if I need to kind of do some weird stuff in the background. So when you open your tool, you've got all of your tabs down at the bottom. Again, your dashboard tab will help you navigate around the tool. So for example, if I click on View Inventory, it'll move me to my Inventory tab where I have a list of all my assets that I've captured in my GIS project and my Fleet and Facility tool. You can also click on Edit My Inventory tool. So like QGIS, AIMNet has designed this so that you can't accidentally change or delete something. So once you've clicked on Edit My Inventory, the tool will bring you to your inventory page and you can start to override the information that you've imported. And to update information, you can simply click on the cells and override the information you have saved here. A new feature with this version of the tool, if you double click on a cell in one specific row, it will open up a window very similar to your attribute window in QGIS, where you can update multiple cells at the same time. So you can just go in and type in information here. And when you're happy with it, you can just press update or cancel if you'd like to abort. So the next thing I'd like to show you guys is the import data button. I know AIMNet is really working on a way to make this the most user-friendly way as possible, but right now it is a little bit clunky. So you need to tell the tool whether you want to add information from a spreadsheet. So that would be your GIS information, or if you want to add in data from your Fleet and Facility tool. So we'll just look at some GIS imports first. So I'm going to specify a spreadsheet and click on the import button. And then a window is going to pop up where you need to navigate to where you have that information saved on your computer. And then you can specify whether you want to add your points or lines. So let's just work on my lines. I'm going to press OK. And then the tool is going to ask me to match some headers. So the information that I have in GIS, those attributes, the names are a little bit different than the column names in my Excel tool. So that's why some of these are coming up as blank versus some of them are automatically populated. So when you're working through this, some of the key ones to remember would be to add your feature code to the feet code column. Quantity for line items will be your length. It's how much you have of that asset. There's nothing really under general description you can add. Under other description next to external link, I like to assign that value to unique ID. The risk values automatically populate. And then useful life, I like to match up install year with install year. Then I click import. And hopefully this tool doesn't freeze. Sometimes, depending on how big your data set is or the processing power of your computer, the tool can take a little while to filter through all that information and add it in. Looks like it's done a good job though. When I go to my user tab, think because I've already added in this information, it won't highlight as new. So this is all the information I've added. It's just added to the end of the list. When you're adding in your fleet and facility tool, again, click on import data. This time specify your fleet and facility and click import. And then you have to navigate to where you have that Excel sheet saved on your computer. Excuse me. I'm not too sure there, Lisa. I don't deal a lot with MAA. For street, like what kind of street information are you wondering about? Like road names and surface type and stuff? Oh, the addresses. I don't know if MAA has a list that they can give you. I think you can import data from other Excel sheets. You would just need to make sure that the information in the other Excel sheets can line up with the columns that we have in this AIM tool.
Yeah, and Lisa, that's something that we can help you out with if you have that information available.
Thanks, Justin. Okay, so adding in your fleet and facilities tool. So you navigate to where you have it saved and press open. The tool will ask you to enter in a municipal ID. For all of our tracked clients, we work with the provincially assigned numbers for municipalities, and they're just done alphabetically. So all the A's, start up at the top and it works its way down. Let's just say for this example, our community is number 5, then press OK. And again, depending on how big your tool is and how good your computer is, this can take a little bit of while. So just let the computer think a little bit. And it should let you know when it's done. God, I love these live demos. They always make me so anxious.
Ayla, I just got a quick question.
Yep.
Is there a way you can kind of circumvent the facility spreadsheet and just use GIS, or do you have to use the facility spreadsheet for an asset management plan?
So that depends, I guess, on your town's preference. Not to plug some partners that Tract has, but there is a database version available. Andre, again, correct me if I'm wrong, but it is open source and available for download, where you can capture your buildings within QGIS, and you don't have to worry about any of these Excel tools. Justin, do we have plans on talking about Civitas within these webinars?
No, we can discuss them when we if the town decides they want to complete an asset management plan.
Okay.
We'll look at the different options then, but just letting the towns know of the different options that are available to them if they decide to pursue an asset management plan.
Sure.
With us or with another organization.
Okay. That being said, I think you can create a layer that would have all the same column names within the Excel tool, and you should be able to add that almost like you would add a database layer. So there's lots of ways to kind of work around and capture your data. So just to kind of show you, you can see all these boxes here are now black. So those are all new components that have been added from the fleet and facility tool. So that's viewing, editing, adding, run calculations. This one's a nice button. The tool does all the work for you if it doesn't freeze. And then it just goes through all of your inventory tab and looks at assigning life expectancies and looking at any predefined values to help calculate some risk information, which will then be published to your reporting tabs. So these tabs, these reports, give you a couple different pieces of information. As I mentioned before, your preliminary state of infrastructure tab almost gives you like a snapshot in time of all your information. So it gives you a breakdown of what you have, what asset groups it belongs to, how much it's costing. And it also starts looking at when you can anticipate some end of lives for your assets. It is important to note that it doesn't mean that all these assets are going to magically turn into pumpkins in year 2038. Just means that you might start to see some failures in your equipment then. The RSOAR tab, again, just looks at all your data through a risk lens and clumps them together in years of when they'll reach their worst risk, which you can see a little bit easier on your risk management tab. So it gives you a 1 to 20 year and 1 to 100 year planning window. Again, these tools are kind of planning purposes, so you can see when you're going to have to start planning for replacements of infrastructure. The 1 to 100 year projection probably isn't going to be really good for day-to-day planning, but it can really give council and staff members a great idea of the impact assets will have over a life cycle. And then pro forma budgets. So when we start to look at identifying projects that you'd like to see happen within a certain planning period, under your inventory tab, when you scroll all the way over, there's 2 columns for project name and year. So you would just type in a name for the asset that you want to see replaced within a certain year, and it will show up under your pro forma budget tab. And the last little thing is just the open source contributors and licenses. So it shows you everybody who's worked on developing the tool and gives you information on the license. Any questions on that before I jump onto the last tool? Justin, am I doing okay for time? I want to make sure Andre has lots of time.
Yeah, you're doing great on time. There's about
Andre's stuff is going to be a lot more fun than what I'm showing you. Okay, so the last tool, your level of service assessment. Again, your main page will give you an introduction on the tool and how to use it. The services and assets allows you to list all of the services your town is providing. So for example, our demo town provides a service of drinking water. So the services it provides would be treatment of that water, transmission and distribution of that water. And then you can list all of the major asset components that go into providing that service, such as valves, your pipes, treatment plants, the source. And you can do that for any service you provide within a certain asset group. If you don't have any services within the asset group, you can just leave them blank. You don't have to have all of these services. And then the workshop portion of the tool. So when you go to the describing levels of service tab, there's a whole bunch of service characteristics that we've identified to start to quantify your current level of service and maybe identify if you do have any gaps. And when you work through this tool, you can look at the indicator of a service characteristic. So for example, under water quality, water pressure could be an indicator. And then when you go through the level options, you can see that a level 1 would have frequent customer complaints and a level 4 could have no customer complaints. Important to note that you don't have to have, or you don't have to be high or low. We're just trying to find a way to easily identify where your town is within its service. These could very easily be options A, B, C, or D. AMET just went with 1 through 4. So for your current level, you would identify what level you are under the current level column by typing in the number here. And if you're happy with where your town is for the target level, you would use the same number in the column. Or if you would like to maybe adjust your level of service, say you are currently at a 1, so your town has frequent customer complaints about water pressure, and you'd like to get to know customer complaints, you would type in 4 for your target level. And this would be a performance gap. So under performance gap, you would say yes. And then you can work through the remainder of that column to identify some options that would help you address that gap. So you could specify do nothing. You could specify adding in PRV chambers or booster stations or conducting a study. And then all of those options, you would specify your preferred one and any associated life cycle analysis for that project and any additional notes. And then when you go to your reporting out tab, it'll take all of those characteristics, but only show the ones that have gaps. So it's a nice way of taking the really big table on the describing levels and just giving you a really concise, easy to look at list. And I think that might be the end of my presentation. So I do have just a slide here showing you some references and additional information if you want to look up anything extra. So for QGIS, their downloads is qgis.org/download, and then this would be their documentation and guides. The source to get to OpenStreetMap. And then it also has a help page to help you use the tool. And then the AIMNet website and contact information. Yay! Thank you guys. I hope you are all still awake. Super exciting stuff, I know. And I guess I'll hand it back off to Justin for Andre to take over.
Perfect. So before we jump into the demo, yeah, we can absolutely send that the presentation link to you, Lisa, and to all the member or all the participants. So we'll jump into just a frequently asked question period, or if there's any questions from the group, then you can put it in the chat, and then we'll be sure to answer it. But I'll jump into a few frequently asked questions that we typically get when we're doing these asset management plans. So that's okay, Yella?
Yep.
Perfect. All right, so the first question would be, what are the benefits of using OpenStreetMap versus Google Maps?
So OpenStreetMap allows a user, or I guess gives a user more control over adding and editing information. Google Maps, you do have the capability of like mailing or emailing in updates to road names and stuff, but it can take a really long time for Google to get around to those updates. Versus using OSM, you could go in, make your changes, and then typically within 24 to 48 hours, they have your edits published. And so they're visible to the world.
Perfect. So my question is, how would the facilities be updated in QGIS? Like, how would that work?
So if you have a layer within your Q project that represents your buildings, depending on how often you do maintenance, repairs, or work on your facilities, you can update information there once a year. With regards to looking at condition values, it is encouraged to look at those once a year. Things can change pretty quickly, and making it an annual habit to just reassess all of your assets is a great tool to staying up to date on your information.
Perfect. All right. I don't see any other questions in the chat, so I'll just ask my final question, and that's related to ArcMap. So if you already have, or maybe an alternative to QGIS, if you have any of those tools already available to you through, different work that you do, is there a way to converge what we do in QGIS to the, the alternatives such as ArcMap or other GIS software?
Yep. So the awesome thing with GIS is it uses a couple different standardized data types. So those would be shape files. When I was showing you my QGIS project, all the layers in my project are saved as a shape file. And any GIS software can read a shapefile. Also, you can create what's called a geo package. So it's almost like a condensed version of data that is compatible between QGIS and ARC or Esri products. So yes, you can use either option with working with the AIMNet tools. And I'm assuming, Andre, again, correct me if I'm wrong, Civitas should also be compatible with Esri products as well, right? Because it's just a PostGIS database connection. So everything can be shared amongst the different softwares.
Perfect. And I guess as a transition to get to Andre's demo, I was just wondering about OpenStreetMap. Is there like a mobile app that you can use, kind of like Google Maps? Like I know when I'm traveling to these different communities, whenever I'm trying to look for, a hotel or something like that, it's always difficult to get one just because they haven't updated their Google Maps. So I'm wondering if there's an app for OpenStreetMap that I could use to do my staycations.
That might be a question for Andre. I've never even looked at the available apps. There probably is.
I think in Google Maps, you have the option to turn on an OpenStreetMap layer, actually.
Okay, yeah. But I don't know if you can like download a specific OSM app on your phone.
Yeah, I don't think so either.
I'm going to look that up while you're presenting, Andre.
Okay, sounds good. Good question, Justin.
All right, so I'll turn it over to Andre, and he'll go through Mergin, which is it's a mobile app for QGIS. So he'll run through a demo of how to use that. I know there was a few questions on that in the previous webinar, so I'll let Andre jump into that little demo for us, and then we'll just complete the webinar.
Right on. How's my mic sounding? Can you hear me okay?
It's perfect right there and where you're positioned.
Okay, perfect. Sometimes it makes me sound like a robot, so just let me know and I will figure something out. So my name's Andre. I work with Landinfo Technologies, and actually we've been doing a lot of work with Justin and Ayla and the other staff over at Tract. I think we've actually been involved, I don't know the exact number, but around 100 municipalities in Newfoundland, helping out with asset management programs. So a big part of what I do is develop open source software applications. And actually, we started off developing that spreadsheet that AIMNet is using. And it sort of evolved to, over the last 5 years, include a whole lot of tools that are GIS based. And today I want to show you something that is a field survey application that will hopefully help you capture some valves or roads or any kind of a field survey that you need to do. And it is also open source and free to download. So I'm going to try to do a little field demo. But first, I just want to share my screen and show you what the application is called. So the application is called Mergin. It is built on top of QGIS. If you Google Mergin, it will come up and you can have a look at the website. There are some other open source field applications, but one thing that I really like about this one is that it has the ability to sync the information that you capture with your desktop computer. So that's a really big benefit, and it definitely declutters your data capture process. I'm sure if you talk to Ayla, there's a lot of time that gets spent sometimes versioning your data. If you have like 5 or 10 different versions, it can get a little bit become pretty tedious. So this aims to only have one up-to-date version of your data set. So Mergin works through QGIS, and I have set up a little demo project. And I just want to show you, this is going to look very similar to what Ayla was presenting, except there's only going to be 3 layers here in the browser panel. One is called Survey, one is called Photos, and the other one is the base map. So this is about as basic as a field capture application can be. So how the application works is you need to set up your QGIS project, and you add whatever fields you would like to capture to your actual QGIS layer. So if you look here on the survey layer, oops, where'd that go? I have one column, which is it's called an FID. This is just a number for whichever survey you're taking. There's also a notes column, and there's also a unique ID column. I have this set up so that you can link photos to the survey layer. So if I open up the photos table, you'll notice there's another couple fields here. There's one called photo, there's one called surveyor. There's a date that's automatically populated. You get a lat and a long of the photo that you took. And some phones actually record which direction your phone is pointing, which can be really handy if you're taking pictures of a building or you just kind of want to orient yourself. And this external PK is just something that we need on the back end, so you don't have to pay attention to that. Okay, so I am now going to sign in with my phone. Justin, if you don't mind allowing me into the Zoom meeting when you can. And I'm going to take a walk outside, and I will meet you in just a second.
I don't see Andre in the participant list, so hopefully it joins. Okay.
This can be a great tool for just capturing data from
Did
the
that
get-go.
come through, Justin?
Or if you're updating information, if your maintenance guys are out in the field and they want to add in like a new curb stop or a new gate valve, this is a pretty awesome tool.
All right, perfect. Now we're on Andre's phone, so he'll go out now in the field and take a picture of something. But I don't know what kind of field your data you're capturing there in your hotel or wherever you are. So
okay, so I'm going to share my screen here, and right now you're joining me on a little tour of where I'm staying. The app that you need to download is called Input. You can download it on if you're on a mobile app, if you're on a MacBook, an Apple or an Android device. If you open that up, let me just see here. Justin, can you see my phone screen okay?
Yes, we can.
we can. Yeah.
Okay, awesome. So the Input app looks like this green circle, and if you open it up, I'm going to open up that same exact project that I just showed you on my desktop. It's called MNL Demo. And you'll see this probably looks pretty familiar. Just going to get off my Wi-Fi. Okay, so now as I'm walking around, you'll see that this is actually tracking my location with my GPS. And on the bottom here, there's 4 buttons. One is called record. I'm going to click that, and it's actually going to zoom in to where I am standing right now in my lane. Right in front of me, there's actually a little valve that I see. I'm going to click add point, and something pops up here with a photo, and I can actually take a photo. Hello.
Look, there's no snow.
There's no snow here, no. So right there is a water valve, and I'm just gonna take a picture right there. Click save. It records the lat long, the direction, and I'm gonna click save and maybe put a little note here saying, here is a demo survey. I'm gonna click save. All right, so let's go back to the office. Let's say we got a whole bunch of water valves, and I will meet you back on the computer.
Perfect. Thank you, Andre. And I guess you'll go to your computer and we'll see the survey point in the map. So once Andre comes back there, oh, he's pretty quick.
Hello. Okay. Just gonna share my screen again. Okay, so you will notice that, let's move these away. So right now there's, I'll zoom into where I capture that. So it was right there. Nothing has shown up yet. That's just because I have to click this sync button right here, which will pull all the data from what I captured online and then bring it to the desktop computer. So I'm going to click sync and cross my fingers. Awesome. And there's that red point that I just captured. And if I look at the data behind that point, click on that, that's the same photo that I took right there. And you can see here's the notes of that demo survey. So this is was relatively a minor data capture exercise, but I just want to show you a successful communities data capture project. Here we go. So this is Lumbee in British Columbia, where I'm working right now. And all of these black dots are actually what the public works guys were taking. So whenever they do any valve exercising or new repairs, they'll take photos of that. So just for curiosity's sake, I'll open up this one. You can see this particular point has 4 photos linked to it. This was a new main extension and a new hydrant that was put in 2016. So this is a really great way to, in addition to capturing those hard copy maps at the beginning of the project to get kind of a base template of where all of your water network is, it's a great way to keep your data up to date and also just kind of organize any new data which you may capture. Okay. That was pretty much it for me. Justin, do you have any questions over there?
I have a few questions because I haven't seen this tool very much. So I got a few selfish questions, I guess. And if there's any questions there in the chat, feel free to ask them and I'll get to them. So I was just curious about how can you put those points into an existing piece of infrastructure? So let's say you take a picture of a manhole. How would you kind of put that into your existing manhole assets that you have in your map?
Good question. Okay. So right here on the layer panel, the survey application that we just configured only has the survey point. But if you directly want to edit, say, one of these mains, say it was a water pipe here, you would add this water pipe layer to your actual survey project. And then instead of going out and capturing, where am I here? Sorry. Instead of going out and capturing this red dot, you would actually go out and using your tablet, you would directly edit this layer right here. So just to kind of show you, it would probably look something. Oh, that's not the word, sorry. But let me move that over.
So Andre, would you be able to add in manholes that way? Like, let's say you don't have any as-built, are you able to go out into the field and take pictures of the manholes and plot those into the map using the app? Or
Absolutely, yeah. You can pretty much capture anything from valves, manholes, pumps. The prerequisite to that is just setting up your survey project properly, so that instead of this being a survey layer, you would call it a maybe wastewater manhole layer and make a field for your manhole ID, or maybe your invert levels if you were going out and doing a depth survey of your manholes. So it's really flexible to what data you can capture.
and what happens if I wanted to do inspections on like an annual basis? Like, how would you properly put those layers into the GIS so that they're categorized by the year the inspection was, or the month, or so on?
Right. So yeah, I think it's really important for that to have a date field in your table. If I open up the survey table right now, sorry, here we go. There's that date field, which this is by default populated, just whenever you take the picture. But if you wanted to have like an annual survey, what you would do is maybe stylize the date based on the year. So I don't know, you would maybe have last year's surveys be red, and then this year's surveys be green. You could even take that one step farther and make a new layer for every single year's surveys. Really depends on your needs, but I think there's a lot of flexibility in the application.
Perfect. And we got a question from the audience. They asked, are you able to map physical property surveys and pick up vacant land? I guess that would
Is that
be
referring to?
Yeah,
Sorry.
I think it would be using the mergent, but there's I would also like the question answered in GIS, if you don't mind, Andre. So like any of the land use, I guess. What we'll be doing in the last webinar is we'll kind of go through the different ways you can implement your asset management plan to account for natural infrastructure analysis, such as your vacant land, any possible way you can implement a layer into your asset management plan and your map to be able to pick up that vacant land. But Andre, I guess you can go into a little bit more detail on that.
Mm-hmm. Justin, are you referring to property parcels or just general areas of future land development?
I believe he is referring to the vacant land. So if I guess, I don't know if the user can explain a little bit further of what his question is, but what I imagine he's asking is related to survey land. So like if he has a survey that he wants to do on a parcel of land, is he able to use that in Mergent and kind of get those survey points, or is the app kind of maybe not accurate enough to do that?
Gotcha. Okay, I understand. So with regards to the accuracy of getting sort of property pins, that is dependent on what type of GPS you're using. The app itself will connect directly to the GPS that's within your phone. But there are options to sort of plug in an external GPS. which will enhance your accuracy. At the moment, only points and lines are supported using the application. So you wouldn't be able to draw polygons. You would only be able to do the actual property points of your vacant land. And the way to set that up would be in a very similar way as we set up the survey points. But you would just sort of choose, okay, maybe something, if you want to be more accurate, is you would explicitly set the lat and the long coordinates. So you would have a field for those and some other notes for your vacant land as well. But that is definitely possible to do.
Perfect. I don't see any other questions from the chat. I just have one final question on how many users could use the merging. Like if you have multiple public works staff, or you might have a town staff and a public works staff that wants to use merging. Are you able to have multiple users on the file, or?
Yeah, this is the beauty of having things hosted in a database. So you can pretty much have an unlimited number of users that are editing and modifying this. The limiting factor is at some point you're going to have to pay for, or either you have to pay for someone else's computer to host all the photos that you're taking, or you can put this on your own computer in the office. But there's no limit in the actual application to how many users you can have. The limit is just where you're going to store all the information that the users are capturing.
Perfect. Thank you, Andre. I don't see any other questions, so I think we're good on the demo. So I'll just give a quick overview of the next webinar. So what we'll be doing is we'll be going through the different steps of how you can implement your asset management plan. So that could be through land use. We'll talk about climate change adaptation, and we'll be looking at green energy. So we'll be looking at the different services that can be provided after you do an asset management plan or during the asset management plan procedure. So that will be